Hello, I'm Diana Banister with the firm Shirley Banister Public Affairs. We've had the pleasure of working with Jenny Beth and Tea Party Patriots for the last 4 years, and have had the pleasure of working with the team in trying to figure out how we best communicate our message, the Tea Party message, to the media and through the media to the rest of the country. And these are our issues. These are the things that we want to focus on, the themes of personal freedom, economic freedom, and a debt-free future. But how do we best do that with the media, whom we all know may be a little bit less inclined to agree with us on our positions on the issues? So let me just introduce our firm, Shirley Banister. We've worked with a number of other conservative organizations throughout the country. How do we communicate our message when we are, as we know, going up against some people who don't agree with us? And in media relations, we always like to focus on the second part of that phrase, relations. It's about relationships. And I have to say, in the day and age that we live in, how we communicate our message has to be positive and has to be affirming of our values and our issues. It can't just be negative. It just can't be throwing a shoe at the TV, which is, I'm sure, what you all want to do right now in seeing people that don't agree with us. So how do we best do that? And in this day and age, like I said, we're all combated with all kinds of information coming to us all the time. And that's the same with the media. They have to work through the clutter of all things that are coming into them. And so how do we communicate with them that makes it better and more interesting to them, that they cover our issues from our perspective? So in doing so, we have to look at where the media is coming from. And in this day and age, as I said, there's a lot of things coming at the media, what they're getting in their inbox. You go and sit down at your computer and you're looking at your inbox and you see all kinds of information coming to you. So most of the media today has to work through all of that. I usually put reporters into two categories, one of two categories, lazy or busy. And today I think the latter is the case. They are very, very busy. They're covering a number of stories. But we also have to look at the perspective they're coming from. You look at the statistics right here. How deep are staff cuts at big papers? Big papers are cutting their staff. So what does that mean? That means more work for the average reporter. They're writing for the blog. They're writing for the website. They're having to go out and get the story, talking to people one-on-one. So they've got a lot to do and a very, very limited time to do it. And you say, well, that's their job. Yes, it's their job, but how do we help them do their job better? And that is what we do at our firm, and try and help our clients to do that and help the reporters do their job by covering our issues more fairly and more accurately. You see this statistic. We also have problems in where the reporters are coming from. Many of them are younger. They may not know where Crimea is. They may not even know about the Cold War and what we went through with Russia. They are younger, in their 20s, maybe 30s, if that. Because the cutting of staff at the papers, that means that they're younger, they are lower salaried positions. So they're coming at it from a perspective, and we know how they've been educated in school, maybe not that well. They're getting the influence of the culture. They're getting the influence of the media, which is not seeing issues the way we do. So we really have to look at it from their perspective of what they're seeing from us. So how do we do that? The next slide shows us that newspaper readership is down, as well as other media. The daily newspapers, the news magazines, all of them are going down in readership. In an average day, where are people getting their news and their information? The Daily Report, the Colbert Report. I mean, it's very disconcerting when we look at, especially young people. They may not get any news in a day at all. They may get it from a text from their friend, or from Twitter, or something that is in the social media world. So we have to look at all these things in order to figure out how we get our message in to all those areas. Top Talk Radio. We love our guys on talk radio. Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and all those other guys who we count on to get our message out. But look at the numbers. Yes, they are reaching 15 million people, maybe, in a given week. But there's 350 million people in the country. So they're speaking to our audience and the people that we support our issues, but we've got to expand our message and expand our base. So how best do we do that? Then you look at cable networks, and we love Fox News Channel and some of the others that we watch, Glenn Beck's network. But look at the numbers there as well. That's 1.2 million people. 2.5 million people in an evening are watching Fox News Channel. We're talking a huge country that doesn't ever watch any of these cable news shows. So they see us as different and maybe radical in our approach. So we have to figure out how we can do that and communicate to them. There we go again, the cable news ratings. And thankfully, we do beat out some of the more liberal stations, but it's still a matter of where we go and where we reach new people with our message. As I said, going newsless. Many of our young people are going without news at all in a given day. So we've got to figure out a plan to reach those people in a new and different way. And as we said, by being positive, by being outspoken on issues even in our local communities. So let's look at how we best do that. When we're looking at creating the news that someone would be interested in, a reporter or someone in the media, we have to ask these questions. Where do people get their information? We talked about that a little bit. Is it on their local cable channel? Probably not. Their local news channel? On the internet, I think we're finding a lot more of that. How do we communicate with the media? How do we build relationships? As I said before, this is about building relationships with those who will be covering us. How do we best make our case to fellow Americans that our principles are best for the country? And what works in our local areas? I was just in Iowa with Jenny Beth and some of the other Tea Party Patriots this last weekend. What works in Guthrie Center, Iowa? Or what works in Sioux City? May not be what works in Washington, D.C. or Atlanta, Georgia, so we have to figure out what works best in our local areas. First of all, what I would suggest is creating a database. Do some research of all the newspapers in your county, in your district, in your state. If you're the state coordinator for Tea Party Patriots or a local affiliated group, find out every single newspaper, create a database, find out who would be covering our issues. And it may be different reporters. There may be 5 different reporters who may be covering our issues at that local paper, at that local TV station, at the local radio station. Find out who you're talking to. Also, do some research on the stories they've written. Have they actually written about Tea Party Patriots or Tea Party issues? Have they written about the local candidates in your area? And what have they written? Have they written about them? What kind of perspective are they coming from? Are they old, young, middle-aged? It gives you a perspective of what they're thinking when they go into writing a news story. When you find out this information, create a database like this, especially with their email addresses, so that anytime you have an event or anytime you have something of interest to them that you think might be interest to them, then you'll have it, write it to the ready, and then you'll be able to email them, call them, whatever. I'd also suggest that you sit down, go have a cup of coffee with them. When we're building relationships and you sit down next to a person or across the table at a coffee shop, they can't see you in the same way that they see how Tea Party Patriots or Tea Party groups are being covered on the national level. They see a human being. They see someone who is just like them. Do their kids go to the same soccer games yours do? Are there connections beyond just the back and forth with the media and the political realm that we are all working in? So once you've created those databases, you'll have that information right at your hands and at your fingertips for whenever you need them. Then building press releases, making it something that they are interested in, will be interested in, so that they will come out and cover your events, or they will follow what you're doing at the local level. Are you giving lazy lawmakers no place to hide? Something that's edgy and a headline that sells. I usually say if it's salacious, it sells. If it bleeds, it leads, is the old adage. So make it something interesting, something local. So what is newsworthy? Let's look at that. Is it timely? I mean, if you're having an event 3 weeks from now, it may not be of that big of interest to a local reporter. So make sure you are looking at it from his perspective. Okay, that's 3 weeks down the line, I'll get to it then. Do it in a day or two in advance. Don't do it too far in advance that they lose track. Or if you do it that far in advance, make sure you follow up with them closer into the date. Is it controversial? As I said, the more controversial it is, the more they will be interested. Is it emotional or sensational? I'm not sure how emotional we can make it, but if you have candidates in your area, if you have something of interest to local folks in your area, that is what will be of interest to them. Does it have local appeal? Does it fit in with the news of the day? I mean, if everyone's talking about the Malaysia airline that day, it may not be that interesting to a reporter on that day. Or if they're talking about some fire that happened in your local town or one of the big cities locally, they may not be that able to focus on your issue that day. And is it news? Is it really something that will cause a reporter to come out or to call you up and ask you information about your event or about something you are working on in your local area? We have to look at all different kinds of media that we have opportunities for. Radio. Talk radio, of course, is one of our favorite places to communicate our message because we get a more engaged audience and able to really share our issues in a longer period of time. But I would call up, and we already created our database, find out who the local producers are for the local shows, the hosts. See if there's an opportunity for a weekly appearance on there, just to give them a heads up or give them a weekly report on what's happening with the local Tea Party. There's events. Sean Hannity does these Let Freedom Ring concerts, but what is your local host doing? Is he going out every Friday morning and having a breakfast somewhere? You go out there and be with him. Do what you can to make that connection with him. Then teaming up with local hosts. Ask your local host to come and MC an event for you, or come to an event and be in part of the debate or discussion between candidates or something like that. Think of ways to incorporate them into your events or your opportunities on the local level. Also, television, same thing. Call up your local stations. Find out who the reporter is. If there's a local reporter that goes out to groups to find out, gives a little flavor about what's happening in their area, find out who that is. Meet with producers of the news shows. Open yourself up as a resource for them. They can't cover our issues if they don't know we're out there. So just say, as a casual call, say, I'm here, I'm the local coordinator for our local Tea Party group. I just want to let you know we're doing things in our area. If you ever need any information, I'm more than happy to provide it for you, and we'd like you to come out to one of our events. Something very, very simple, something straightforward. Just be a resource for them. If you have the resources, of course, advertising on a local station obviously gets them to pay more attention to you. And is there a cable access channel in your area that is very affordable, that you could do a half-an-hour show, a 15-minute show, and communicate your message that way? Have a debate show on there. Something that really gets to the base of people in your area that you can really communicate with. And then we have print. The print media is very critical to our message because we have opportunities where we don't in some of the other venues. Op-eds are critical. If you have the database of all the newspapers in your local area, write an op-ed. Write down an opinion about something you've seen in the news. Don't do it from vitriol or from any perspective other than the messages we've already talked about. Being very positive about our message and what we want to communicate. when you write an op-ed, it's got to be about an issue, something you feel compelled to write about, whether it's debt, the debt ceiling, something that is really, you are really passionate about, that you can put down in words. Usually an op-ed is about 600 words, 650, maybe 700 at the most. Submit it to your local newspaper, to the editor, and see if you can start communicating to your local area that way. Also, political reporters. Create the database of those who will be covering our issues. And once you start making those relationships with them, you might suggest a profile story of your local group. I'm sure there's lots of flavor and lots of personal stories of why people have gotten involved in their local Tea Party groups. So provide that, again, as a resource to these reporters who are looking for stories. They may not know this group exists in their local area, so find them and really start that relationship with them. Also, follow your local columnists. What are they writing about? And if they have something that you disagree with or agree with, write letters to the editor. Have the people in your group write letters as much as possible. When they hear 3 people saying the same thing, they will print them. They will publish those letters. And you will at least bring back a little bit more of a Tea Party perspective to your local media outlet, whether it's print or even the online papers as well. A lot of the papers have gone online. So they actually have commentary sections after a lot of the columnists. So write a commentary. It doesn't have to be long, couple lines or a paragraph, as much as you can. Follow what your local papers are saying so that we can counter any bad arguments, anything that we disagree with, but also that we can communicate positively what we believe in. Then, of course, as I said, the internet is critical to our message now, simply because we have to go into all the world and preach the gospel. Okay, preach the Tea Party message. Whatever it may be, we've got to figure out a way to communicate it. So go to your local news stations, your local newspapers. They have online sites. As I said, they have commentary sections after their columns. But also look for opportunities. If you have not created a website for your local area, find ways where you can put blogs together, or you can put information out there in a new way. On the next slide, of course, we talk about Facebook, Twitter, social media networks. You know what's best in your area and what works to communicate. But find your local church, find your local VFW, someplace where you can find more and more people and get involved in the community. We know we have to convert people one person at a time. If they don't know who we are, we don't have a face to who we are, they don't know we're there. So we've got to find those ways to communicate with people in our local area that will attract them to us and help them to understand what we do believe in as Tea Party members. As I said, building the relationships is critical to working with the media. Talk to them like you would anyone else, whether it's Brian Williams or George Will or Sean Hannity or even Rush Limbaugh. We just need to make sure our message is out there. And so talk to them like you would anyone else. Be very respectful of them. Do not come with them, even if you do suspect them of bias, of being biased or liberal or anything else. You want to communicate with them our positive message. Find common ground. As I said, do their children go to the same school yours do? Are they in the same clubs you're in? Are they going to the same church? Do they go to the local coffee shop? Find those common areas that you can communicate with them, not just about what the issues are, but really find that relationship that you can forge with them. Remember, you are not being a nuisance to them. You are helping them do their job better. So don't ever think you are, unless, of course, you're calling them every day. Don't call them every day. Just give them the information that they need in a very respectful way. Understand that it takes time. This is not going to happen overnight. This is a long-term avenue that we need to develop in order to really work with the media and help them understand what our issues are. The rules of the road. When working with the media, we have to be very careful as well, because we've all seen the people who have been on air, on TV shows, and the media will try and find the craziest people in the group in order to cover them and think this is all a reflection on the Tea Party. So you need to establish ground rules with the media. The first is there are no rules. Actually, keep yourself very cautious in going too far in talking to the media. Make sure you lay the ground rules as being there is no on the record, off the record, on background, on deep background. Those were the old rules. Anything goes these days, so be very cautious and careful. But also be forthright and be understanding of where they're coming from. Number two, never take a press call cold. If you have an opportunity to have someone answer a phone call from you, if you know it's a reporter, don't take it cold. Find out what they're calling you about. If it's something controversial, you don't want to take it cold and say something wrong. You want to think through your message. And what we suggest to people is that they have 2 or 3 messages that you want to communicate on a particular issue to a reporter. So think it through in your mind before you talk to anyone. You might even write them down. Write those issues down and say, this is what I want to communicate. No matter what, if you're going on a TV show, if you're going to be having a reporter at your local event and you know he's going to come up and ask you a question about X, have in your mind a message that you want to communicate to them and keep saying it over and over again. The 2 or 3 messages, keep saying it no matter what they ask you. And they may try and come back with you with something very controversial and want you to respond. Think through your message. Think before you speak. Communicate those messages over and over to them. Anticipate likely questions. You'll know if there's something controversial, what they will ask you about, and continue to do so. Be calm. Keep your composure. Just, as I said, treat them very kindly and with respect, but don't give them too much information. Give them the message that you want to communicate. We suggest not saying no comment if you don't want to comment on an issue. It sounds dismissive of the question. It sounds that we have something to hide. What you want to say is, I don't know where you're going on this question, but here's what I would say about this. Just turn it back around to what you want to say and to your messages again. Be honest. Never lie to the press. You may not have to tell the absolute truth, but you will lose your credibility if it ever comes out that you lied to a member of the media, and you will never be able to work with them again. Your sins will, I always say, your sins will find you out. If you do lie, it will come out somehow eventually. Never take a hypothetical question. That's oftentimes where a lot of people get into trouble, is when they say, well, what would happen if X? Well, you can't speculate on what would happen. You want to say, I'm not sure, I can't take that hypothetical, I don't know how that would work, but I would tell you, if this is the question you're asking, this is my answer. Don't fall into their trap, because they'll try and get you into a position where you cannot back yourself out. So taking a hypothetical question, simply say, that's a hypothetical question. I really can't speculate on that, but here's what I can tell you. Don't repeat a negative back to a reporter. If they say something like, well, don't Republicans or Tea Party members just have a war on women? Say, no, we don't have a war on women. It sounds defensive, and it sounds that anybody can take a clip and a bite out of it and say, with your words, you saying war on women. Or, doesn't the Tea Party hate minorities? Or don't they hate the poor? No, we don't hate the poor. It just sounds defensive. It sounds like we're repeating it right back to them, and you don't want to be quoted in the story that way. Correcting a bad story is always a difficult situation, because if a reporter comes to your event, or if they are out covering the Tea Party in some way, and they come at it from a position and report it inaccurately, it's difficult to turn it back around. But I would suggest that you talk to the reporter. Do not accuse them of bias, even if it is a matter of bias. Come back to them with a factual case for correcting the story. it's always best if you have all your facts laid out right before you in order to tell it to the reporter. Here's where I think you are wrong on this, or here's where I think the facts play out a little differently than what was portrayed in the story. Be very calm. Do not accuse them of bias. If you go back and forth with the reporter, if they don't seem to understand your position, you can go to their editor, but then that oftentimes leads to a difficulty with that reporter in the future, because you say, well, you went over my head, now I'm not going to be able to deal with you anymore. So it's very, very tricky. I would try and do it with the reporter at all costs, unless it's simply he's hard-headed and doesn't see your side of the issue, then you can go back to the editor. But with all that said, we have to keep the positive message first. We want to let people know what we are for. Don't get cornered into answering their questions. If the media comes at you with, well, there's all kinds of speculation questions that they have. Don't answer their questions the way they want them answered. You go with the messages you've already created. Personal freedom, economic freedom, a debt-free future. Think of those things in your mind every time you go into an interview. Transitional phrases to get back on message if they ask you something controversial. As I said, 2 to 3 messages, keep repeating them over and over in your mind. What I would suggest is that you go home from today's session and find out, write through some of the issues that you really feel passionately about and why do you believe them. Write them down in a way that you think would be best if you were in a TV interview. Or have somebody, one of your neighbors and friends, come over and say, okay, this is a mock interview and I'm going to do this with you. What would you say about this? Have someone ask you some controversial questions and see how you do on your feet. Try and really work through, or do it in front of your mirror at home if you are going to be on TV. If you don't know an answer to a question, tell the reporter you'll get back to them. Be a source, as I said, be a source for them. Help them do their job better by being a good source and someone who provides them information and the issues we all believe in. Then we also want to put our opponents on the defense. Don't be flat-footed. Understand where a reporter is coming from or an issue is coming from, so you know how best to respond. As I said before, don't be defensive. Be positive about our message. Do your research, do your homework, find out what the best approach would be on this issue. Know what your opponents are saying and develop a message to counter it. As again, focus on what we're for and put a smile on it. Don't make it personal. It's about policy. Oftentimes they'll accuse us of other motivations for what we believe in. Do not make it personal back to them. Just talk about our issues, talk about it in a factual and an accurate way, and hopefully we'll bring people around to our way of thinking, even in the media. Remember, be the happy warrior. We can take this country back. We can do it one reporter at a time, one person at a time, and we know everyone is part of this movement can do it. If you need help, talk to your local coordinator or go to the help desk at the website. We are here to help you do the best you can in your local and state areas. Again, I'm Diana Banister with Shirley Banister Public Affairs and Tea Party Patriots. Thank you very much.